today we're going to do our first brew. So we have our fermenter. It does up to 30 litres, but I think initially we're going to do 23 litres. The actual brew, which is our blonde lager. Bottle brush, so we use that to clean out our bottles, make sure they're all sanitised before we go into the bottling stage. We have our mixing spoon, sanitizer for making sure everything's actually clean and we're not going to grow any bugs. Carbonation drops, that's just basically sugar used for the secondary fermentation. We have our tap, and this here is for filling up the bottles. It's a little valve at the bottom and attaches to your tap. We have our hydrometer, and this measures your specific gravity, so how dense your brew is, and that's how you can tell the fermentation is finished. We have our thermometer to make sure that you're brewing at the right temperature. Too hot, the yeast dies. Too cold, and the yeast doesn't get up. We have our airlock, which is this guy, and a grommet just to seal it, and that just basically lets the carbon dioxide that the yeast produce get out, but also doesn't allow any bugs in. And you fill it up with water sort of to the line there, and that keeps it nice and clean inside. And then lastly, this is extra beer enhancer. It's basically just more food for the yeast, gives you a higher alcoholic content, and can give more flavour. Okay, so the first step that we have to do is to assemble our fermenter. So onto the fermenter, we're going to put our tap. So we have our tap with its seal. We don't need this just yet, that's only for bottling. And we need to unscrew the plug and screw the tap in. We also need to test it for leaks. And when we do that, we obviously want to make sure that it's not actually already open. So now we're going to take the plug out and put the tap in. I'm just using a large screwdriver. Okay, so now we're just going to put some water. This is just water out of the fridge, but seems to be the case. Okay. So now we're going to put the thermometer on. Okay, so we now have the thermometer on. We can measure our... So next we're going to install the airlock and the grommet. The grommet just acts as a seal around the bottom of the airlock. And the airlock we fill with water to keep the dust and the bugs out. So we start by putting the grommet into the hole in the lid, and then we gently press the airlock into the grommet. You can see it poking through the other side there. And that will create a nice seal to make sure that nothing gets in. And we can see it sits nicely in the U-bend here, so any gas that comes out here will flow through, but no dust can get through in the other direction. So the next step is we're going to clean our fermenter out, just to make sure that there's no bugs that we're going to accidentally grow. So we're going to put some water in here, and we're going to use the sanitizer, and we're going to get it nice and clean and flush it all out. So what we're doing is we're filling up the fermenter with 5 litres of water, and we're going to have 2 tablespoons of our sanitizer, and we're going to swish everything around, including the spoon, to thoroughly clean the surfaces before we start. And that makes 5 litres. That's 2. We also want to sanitize our spoon because we'll be using that to stir our wort as it ferments. So we want to make sure that that's clean. So that goes in there as well, which is quite heavy. You want to be careful to hold on to it carefully. Okay, so we've now got a clean and sanitized fermenter and spoon. We've got the yeast is stuck to the bottom here, so we're going to take the yeast off. Alright, so we have our beer yeast. We're going to set that aside. And then this pouch we're going to put in a pan of hot water for 15 minutes to get it nice and liquid and soft. Come back in 15 minutes and we'll be ready to add into the fermenter. See you in 15. If we need to, we can rinse it out with some warm water that we've got left over. Doesn't smell like beer yet. Right, then we're going to add 3 litres of boiling water into this. So we're now adding boiling water. This is the first litre. Just using some hot water to get rid of the last little bits. So we've added some of the boiling hot water. We've got 1 more litre of boiling hot water to add. And then we're going to add our liquid malt extract. Then we'll bring the water up to 23 litres, which is the level we need for this batch. Once it's below 25, we then add our yeast in, give it a final stir and put the lid on, and we're good to go. We have to add in our liquid malt extract.
Oh, wow.
Now that we've got our mixture in the bottom there with our boiling water, we're going to put cold water in, and we're going to bring it up to 23 metres. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 8, sorry, 9, 10, 11, 12. Let's just watch this carefully. So the last stage is to add the yeast in, and the yeast is going to eat the carbohydrates in here and make alcohol for us, and carbon dioxide. The temperature is probably between 26 and 24, which is 25, which is ideal. So it's going to be between 20 degrees and 25 degrees for the yeast to thrive. So we're going to open up our yeast. I'm going to pop it in. Make sure we get it all in. Okay, and then we have to stir. Make sure that yeast is fully mixed through so it can be activated and begin the fermentation process. As long as the weather's not too cold, the yeast will actually produce its own heat and it will keep the wort warm. If you're trying to brew in very cold climates, you may need a heater around your fermenter to keep the wort warm. Okay. And then we seal it up. It's a nice seal there, and then as the fermentation process starts, we'll start to see bubbles come through here, and it'll push the water down here and bubbles will come through.